Hi, I'm Thomas Haslett, and I will be interviewing Danny Creagan.
Creagan, it's like
Creagan.
Reagan, only with a C.
Okay, and
Not
it's March 17th, 2023, and we're at the Bellevue University Veterans Center. I'd like to go into a little history of pre-military service.
That was a long time ago. Okay.
Where were you born?
Centerville, Iowa.
Where's that near?
Not too far from here, about 90 miles from here. Over in southern Iowa, Avenues County.
Were you there when you grew up through the up to you when you went into the Air Force?
Sure. I probably stopped being there when I was about 17. Well, when I got out of high school, I started moving off to the big cities like Davenport and Ames and places like that to get work. And then I got notification that I was going to be drafted, and so I took that opportunity to enlist in the Air Force.
Really? When you were bringing up in your high school days, what was your interest during those days?
Cars. Last 2 years, girls. Definitely not going to college. Hated school. Decided I wanted to work for a living and almost got to do that.
Any good stories you want to tell?
About high school? Oh my God, no. There weren't any.
Your parents, what did they do?
My dad was superintendent of the waterworks for Centerville, Iowa. That sounds like a mid-class job. It was probably a little bit less than middle class. Pretty poor town. So for that time, he was making $400 a month, that's pretty good. But for that time, that was the '60s, early '60s and '50s. But still, it was just a job. And I got to make use of his authority, such as it was, because I had summertime jobs with the waterworks. So I would make $1.25 an hour or $1 an hour and dig ditches.
Your mother, did
She was a housewife, and 6 kids, and I was the last. I think I was a mistake. My nearest sibling is like 10 years older than me, so.
Oh, really? Are they all still living?
They're all dead.
Oh, so you're the last one of them.
I'm the last of that group, yeah.
Did they serve in the military?
I had one brother, Patrick, who served. He was caught in the Chosin Reservoir retreat and died there. So.
That's in Korea. So you were in high school when family knew or was informed about his passing?
I was 4 years old. Remember, I was forgot. I was a mistake. So my youngest sibling was 10 years older than me.
Wow. So you graduated from high school, and how long before you went into the military?
I was 19 when I went in, October 25th, 1963, 65. Let's go with 65.
So it was, you joined because of the draft, basically.
Yes.
When you graduated to when you joined, how much of a time frame there? Were you able to experience the civilian world for any length of time?
Well, sporadically. Yeah, I was probably, see, I graduated my high school when I was 17. It was 19, So a year and a half or two.
What, did you do anything that caught your interest that you want to do the rest of your life?
No.
Paints
Paints a stark picture, but I was a typical teenager who didn't think there was any life to worry about. And then I figured out later on when I grew up a little bit that maybe I should do something here. And my parents didn't push me to college or anything, so not their fault. I didn't want to go.
So you were drafted / enlisted.
Yeah.
Did you get the career job that you wanted?
No. I wanted to be a radar operator, and so I figured I'd get flight duty and all that good stuff. And I got radar repairman instead. It's a tad different. In the end, I think it worked out for me because they sent me to electronic school, and I got used to learning again, and so it worked out, I think. Would I have done it differently? Probably not. I would probably started the same way. So.
Did your family, since they had one son that died in Korea, were they leery of you going in?
Oh, of course. My dad, not as much. My mother was somewhat excitable, and she felt that the same thing would happen to me when one day an officer would come up to her door and tell her her son was not going to come home. But that didn't happen, I don't think. Except that one time.
Then you entered the Air Force because of the... Why? Why did you go Air Force?
I had a couple friends that had just gotten out on their first. They served 4 years or 4 years then too. 4 years, and they got out, and I met them, and we were working together, and they were telling me about what the Air Force was like. And while in some cases they didn't like it, they liked it more than the others who were talking about ground pounding in Marines and Navy. Definitely didn't want to go on a ship. And so I didn't know if I could even qualify to be a Marine. I knew anybody would go in the Army, and I had a couple friends in the Army. When they came back, yeah, they were in shape, but God, they were changed, They were.
In which way?
What happens when you go through basic training? You go in, you talking to everybody around you, come out the other end, you're all uniform, you can't even recognize who the hell it was you walked in with. That's what happened to them, only in a more significant way. They didn't seem like they were as sociable as they were when they went in. So I don't know. I don't want to put too much weight on that, but when I bounced it all in my brains, the Air Force came out on top. So I went up to Des Moines, Iowa, and signed in and got the best meal of my life. My mother is the worst cook ever. I didn't know that until I went to the chow the first day.
Did you have any buddies that, at that time frame when you entered, did you have any buddies that passed away because of the war?
Well, my brothers.
I mean, Vietnam.
Oh, Vietnam? No, but I did meet a couple who had PTSD. That was early on, but that was 65, 66. But a couple who were handicapped. They didn't call it PTSD then, or maybe they did, but they didn't know where I was. But it was obvious that was what they had. Typical sleepless nights, jitters, hear something loud, get scared, that kind of thing.
Where did you enter the recruiting? Des Moines or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was probably still is, the recruitment center for the Air Force.
Did you have any shocks going into the reality of boot camp compared to what you were?
Oh yeah, I think enlisted boot camp was a shock to me. I had a hard time getting my mind around it at first, but I did. So did everybody else. Well, most of everybody else. So.
Do you have any a story that stands out in boot camp?
I think my best story about boot camp is probably a funny story. It has little to do with anxiety or anything. But you walk into the chow hall, and when you're first going into the chow hall, the cooks have all the food they're going to prepare laid out, and then they have the food that you can pick up on. And the cooks like to screw with the new people. So they would put big bowls of eggs out front, and it would come up and you had these little shiny things that looked like a dessert of some sort. And literally, you're just drawn to, because you're going in and grabbing the food, you're just drawn in. You're drawn in to try and grab those eggs and bring them up. The guy in front of me did, and he got his butt chewed out by the cooks. You know, you don't know better than that. I said, you know, I was looking at that and said, this is a trap. I said, they're trying to get you to do that. So, no, I don't want any of those.
How long was your boot camp?
When was that? No, the first one was 12 weeks, 16 weeks, something like that.
So,
Not long. It felt long when we were in it, but.
did you get in shape?
Oh, yeah. I wish I could have that shape back. Yeah, I wasn't in, I worked construction and everything else, so I was in reasonable shape when I went in. But I was a little bit heavy and lost all that, and yeah, I was literally, I could have just took off and jogged all day long. I think it was amazing, the difference.
You say you went into radar repair?
Yeah,
Was that ground radar or airborne?
airborne.
Airborne. How long was that school?
9 months, 10 months, somewhere around, close to a year. I think it was, it's either 9 or 11 months, and I can't remember which one it was. I went in right out of Lackland, Biloxi, Mississippi. It was cold when we started. It was cold when it ended. So.
I come from the electronics background too. Was it hard to pick up on that, the electronics?
I found it fascinating.
In which way?
I found I could get my mind around it really easily, and they kept me back for 6 months as an instructor at the end of it. So not only did I feel good about it, I actually achieved something which I didn't normally do, a recognition, which I didn't normally do in high school. I was trying not to do that in high school. So yeah, I embrace it. I still play with it today. So
Really?
I'd be a good poster for the Air Force for that reason. Now, others maybe not, but that one.
So was that the best part of tech school for you?
Oh yeah, the learning environment. Although I met some people there, and they had student leaders. They called them ropes. I don't know if they had them. Yeah, so I made for some reason I accepted a rope, and then all of a sudden I had that responsibility. I said, well, I shouldn't have done that. but yeah, I had, when I was in tech school, the only people I only knew one person that was a dork, and there were other people you maybe didn't want to deal with, but this guy ended up being my roommate, and I got him kicked out. So he stole. Worst thing in the world to do in a barracks.
From other airmen?
And me. And so we fixed him. Legally.
Okay.
We didn't do a blanket party.
Would you say that would be the worst part of tech school, or was there something?
Worst part? I think I was just growing up still in tech school, and so met a lot of new things. Biloxi, went through Mardi Gras and survived, and just became a more worldly person, even though that's only Louisiana and Texas. That was significant for a guy, farm boy stuck in Centerville, Iowa. So,
Was there any good pranks that were pulled that you can remember? That you can
not at that tech school. I got another school I got to have a good prank on, but it was pulled on me. But
we'll save that for later. Being an instructor, what was a satisfying thing for you to do that came?
I didn't realize that teaching was fun, and they asked me to give them some practice teaching examples, and it wasn't, I was told to do that. That's what it came down to. So I got up, I prepared for it, and I did my thing, and they sent me to instructor school, and so I came back to the same place and was teaching the same courses that I had just walked out of. So that was interesting. So the teaching was just, suddenly I was finding another way to advance. I was starting to grow a little bit, I think.
And you did that for 6 months, you said?
Yeah, this was the big push pre-Vietnam, 65, and this is this big push where they were trying to get as many people as possible through all these schools, because they knew it was bad things were coming, and so they didn't have enough experienced instructors, and so they would pick certain people who had that aptitude out of the classes, send them to ATC training school, and bring them back and have them teach the same damn classes they came out of. It worked out pretty good. They had a core of experienced instructors that made sure we didn't do really stupid things, and yeah, it came out pretty good.
6 months wasn't long enough, was it?
No, in fact, I asked to stay, but they wouldn't let me. I got sent to Otis, Massachusetts, and from there back to jungle training, and then back to Otis, Massachusetts, and then to Thailand.
What was Otis, what was stationed there, what aircraft?
Well, HC-135s, but RC-135s, geez, 121s. And I don't know if you undoubtedly heard the Battle of Khe Sanh. Yeah?
The who?
Battle of Khe Sanh in Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay, I was involved in part of that. And in what they did, this was McNamara's electronic fence. So he dropped these Dalek-looking boxes down into the jungle, and he orbited around them and listened to see what was down there. And so if they were bringing troops in or digging underground, he would hear them. Okay, that was totally classified. Isn't anymore. Otis, Massachusetts is where our training ground was. To go to the jungles. We were in Otis, Massachusetts in the winter, but the aircraft we were going to do, we were sent there for probably another 6 months, which was just an interim duty to going on into Thailand to launch these airplanes out to do that electronic fence thing. And so that's one of my battle stars, Khe Sanh.
So you were at Khe Sanh?
Once. I wasn't at there. Because I was in maintenance, and I was in flight staff in maintenance, so I was up on the airplane several times.
And that was what?
And that wasn't there. It was up 30,000 feet above it.
Okay. So you went to Altus, not Altus, Altus?
Otis.
Otis.
I managed to close most of the bases I left, so Otis is closed.
The training that you got there was for that one system, that listening system?
For the thing that carried that one system was what my training was for. So an RC-121, it's got to have the most robust pilots in the world because it's got 3 tails. So, so it was a Super Constellation. So it was specifically modified to have that listening capability, and that included multiple radios and multiple recording devices, and yada yada yada. And a crew of 21 when it went up, so that at least 21 when it went up, and so to give you an idea, it was a busy little airplane.
Was that the hardest part of that? The training that you received, basic training didn't involve the stuff you were learning? I mean, doing...
I know, basic training had little to do with what I did in the Air Force. It did teach you the basics, what basic training, you know, rank and respect and things like that.
So how long were you at OTIFs?
Long enough to buy a car
Really?
for $100.
New car?
$100. It was an old Plymouth that the doors kept opening on when you turned corners. So we wired the doors shut so people wouldn't get killed riding around with me. So I think about 6 months. Yeah, 6 or 7 months is all I was there, just to get trained up on those airplanes.
So from there, where did you go?
From Otis, side trip to jungle warfare training, which you practice getting killed in the jungles back down in Louisiana. And then over to Korat, Thailand, which was my first real tour. And that was what we worked out of there.
How long were you there?
A little over a year.
What was your first impression of that base?
Stinks.
Really?
Smells were horrible. If you've never smelled a Thai town, and we were right on top of the town, if you've never smelled a Thai town before, it was bad. People usually get sick when they first smelled it. So it was open sewage and no sanitary stuff or anything else. That was my first impression, but it got better. You got used to the smell, and then we got out on the economy, and I decided that I wanted to go to college, believe it or not. At Korat, Thailand is where I started back up in college, started college. And I took a couple courses in Thai and could read and write it barely, and could speak it good enough that I could go downtown alone and buy and get cabs and go to the places I'd on the map and that kind of thing. But so I liked languages. I really liked the school because the people teaching it were Thais who were educated Thais. They weren't the natives who were uneducated or anything like that. They were sophisticated, and you get an appreciation for people when that happens, you know. And you wait a minute, this person is as good as I am or better in many things, you know. So you learn to not think of foreigners as lesser. Very good lessons to be learned in that, by the way, but for me it was. And
tell me about one of the good lessons that you learned.
Well, a female Thai teacher and I hit it off as far as we hit it off as friends. There was no physical contact, but she started. She had been in the U.S. and went through university at what the hell was it? Somewhere, and so she would bring in letters she got from her friends from the U.S. And this is normal for any language, but she'd bring in these letters and look down, and she'd ask me to read this and tell me what it meant, because the idioms, you know, Americans write idioms all the time. They're just crazy about them, and they don't translate very well. And so she would bring these letters in and show them to me and ask me about them. And one time one of the letters had, one of her best friends had a baby stillborn. And she asked me, what did that mean? And I said, oh God. I said, it was born dead. And the Thais treat death a little bit different than us. They try not to show remorse when they hear about it, but she showed remorse. And she was her best friend, and she was expecting. It was just, you have a connection moment when you start doing that kind of stuff, and I learned that there.
What was the beauty about Thailand that you liked?
Well, it's a very beautiful country, and the people. Once you get by the smells of the outback villages, the people are really nice. I mean, you can go to, you can have people tell you about their trips to places like France, to places like maybe Mexico, but definitely some of the South American countries that don't appreciate having foreign visitors, just like Americans don't appreciate having foreigners, and so, you know, find some Americans don't. And but I never found a place like that in Thailand. I was up across into Cambodia, up in the northern part towards Laos, and we would go. There was not an English speaker in 200 miles, and I had my fractured Thai to support me, and I always got along. Find beer. You find something to eat that was good, and as long as you had your stomach acclimatized to the food, you were in good shape. You could rent a taxi for $8 a day.
Were you afraid to move around in Thailand like that?
Only once. Actually, I got two stories on that one. Yeah, there were the bandits started coming in across the Cambodian border and back and forth, and they were stopping taxis and robbing the people who were in them. And there was one incident where they stopped the taxi and got out, and my friend was in the taxi, and he had a gun, and they got back to the door with clubs, and he pulled out the gun, and that was it. Okay, we're gone, and they left. And the other time I was scared was, you know what a Samlaw is? You ever heard what those are? Samlaw is a 3-wheel bicycle, and you use that to carry passengers. Well, they were about the only thing you get, because a lot of times taxis, just weren't any taxis. And so I was on a Samlaw ride, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been out in the bar all night, and I didn't know where the hell I was. And I told this guy on a Samlaw that I wanted to go to the airbase. Well, he was new in town. He didn't know which way the airbase was, and I was too drunk to see. And so about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, there's 2 hours worth of riding on this thing. I woke up and looked around, and we were out in the countryside. Nowhere, nothing. I had no relationship to what I was or where I was. As far as I knew, we were going to Cambodia or someplace dangerous. And so I said, what did you just do? And so we talked it over, and this guy says, I want to see your ID. I want to make sure you're American. What the? Okay. So I showed him my ID, and he wanted to take it. I said, no, you can't have it in your hand. And so I said, if we're going to have a stand, let's have it now. And he said, okay, all right. But I want to make sure you're not communist. He was saying this in Thai. He was just crazy. That's what it was. And what did I do to myself? Long story short, I finally got him headed in the right direction by guess. And about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, I rolled into the base after been all night, drunk as a skunk, sobered up, and it really quickly I was somewhere when I thought I was going to be gone. So that was my big adventure. That and slipping into a benzo ditch, which everybody has to do once.
That's a lot to do in 1 year.
It was a busy year. It was a good year. It probably is the year that made me want to take on the Air Force as a profession. So
Really? Where did you go from there?
Thailand first time back to McCoy Air Force Base, which is now Disney World. I guess they had to close them all.
What'd you go there for?
Same job. Went back for at 135 and B-52 maintenance, and just did that. Learned how to scuba dive. That was my big event for there. Didn't learn much more in the Air Force, so I became a staff sergeant, and wanted to. Oh yeah, maybe I should remember this part. I got married. I met my wife at a scuba diving event, and she didn't die. She hates water, but she was just looking for guys like I was looking for girls. But we met and got interested and got married. So that was the start. She's from England.
What's England, and what was she doing in?
She was a service brat. She was born in England. Her dad was senior master sergeant, and her mom was native English, and they Brit, and they got married there and came over to Florida, and I met him. So.
That training was, what, 6 months, you'd say, or?
What training?
The learning B-52s and 135s.
Oh, no, I was there for a long time, probably 4 years.
Doing flight line training or the back shop?
Both. There wasn't, in those days there was no front shop or back shop. You did both, and if you were halfway good at it, you get to do the shop stuff, because that was a lot nicer in the summertime. You had air conditioning.
What airplane did you like better?
Oh, I liked 135 because the B-52 was hot, and we had an antenna on the top of the tail of the B-52, and guess what antenna went out the most? And you get to climb to the top. That's a long ways up there, and you're just hanging on a cherry picker. Jeez. I know for a fact, I didn't do it, but I know for a fact if you drop a wrench while you're taking out the omni antenna at the top of the B-52 tail, it will go through the horizontal stabilizer below. It happened.
Since you were now married, where did you go with your wife to your next base?
I thought you were going to go, where'd you go on your honeymoon? I went, on our next base was an assignment to England.
Ooh.
And that was the period where I almost got out of the Air Force. It was 1974. They were wanting people to leave. They were drawing down the Air Force. Vietnam finished. And it looked like there wasn't going to be a whole lot of promotions or anything else, to tell you the truth. And so I applied for Project Transition. Project Transition was a project at that time to get people out. And what they would allow you to do is you go out for 90 to 180 days and work at a job outside of the Air Force, earn that paycheck and your Air Force paycheck at the same time. So I took Project Transition, and I was going to leave. I had a job at a radio station selling time. So I'd go out to people, to businesses, and try to sell them commercials.
Was this over in England, or?
No, this was still in Coy. I'm telling you how I got there because I was in Project Transition, and for some reason, like three or 4 months into Project Transition, I got notification, even though they should have me as due for discharge, I got a notification for an assignment to Mildenhall, England. And so I accepted it, and I absolutely outraged all of my bosses because they thought I had, I pulled one over on the Air Force. And in a way I did, but they offered, I accepted it. I didn't ask for it. So anyway, went to England, and then I decided, okay, I'll stay. And I finally made that commitment. And so I studied hard. I was with RC-135s and even SR-71s and a whole bunch of stuff went in and out of Mildenhall. And I studied, continued on in college, got my degree while I was at Mildenhall.
In what?
Liberal arts. It was history and English. Funny that I couldn't remember that. History and English, and applied to OTS, and so remember, everybody was going home because they were cutting back. They picked 2 liberal arts degree candidates that year for OTS, the whole year long. I was one of them.
Really?
I don't know how that happened. Didn't have that. I mean, I was cum laude, but hell, everybody was cum laude if they wanted to apply. I don't know what my distinguishing feature was other than I came up on the lottery, and I got it. So out of England, wife goes back to Florida, I go to San Antonio, Medina Complex, did my thing, came back up second lieutenant.
Did you have any career plans, path that you wanted to follow, or?
Actually, because I'd been in it now for 9-10 years, almost 10 years, I decided I wanted to stay with aircraft maintenance. So, and in fact, that time I got it. I became an aircraft maintenance officer. I was in Colorado training for 5 months, and I was an aircraft maintenance officer and went to Homestead Air Force Base, Florida. First assignment as an officer, which you have to relearn how to be in the Air Force again, because it's different. While I had, in fact, I had very good friends who were enlisted, you still had to have the appearance of not being associated too closely with enlisted people, and also being nice to your superiors as well. And as a second lieutenant, you're right in between. There is nobody that you control, and everybody is out of your ballpark. So it kind of sucks to be. I went from being a tech sergeant to a second lieutenant, and it was the first year or two before I was up for first. I was like, Jesus, this sucks. This is not working.
What changed? What changed?
I got rank. That's all it came down to. So yeah, first lieutenant was better, and captain, of course, is lots better.
Any, that path as an officer in the beginning, any good stories there that you want to pass on?
I think they were pretty standard. Basic training for enlisted and officer training are 2 completely different things. Basic training is much harder than officer training. I can tell you that right now. Officer training, everybody calls you Mr., even though you're not an officer yet. That was nice. I said, geez, this is going to be all right. So yeah, I thought officer training, they teach you more about air power and strategies and political issues and that kind of thing, of course, because that's what you're supposed to be dealing with all the time, being aware of at least all the time. So it was pretty straightforward. I don't know anybody that was worried. I don't know any Mustang, any guy who was listed who went back into officer training that had any problem. They understood rank. They understood, you have to show respect for rank, and you have to observe the prejudices of rank, and you have to go do things that you didn't want to do sometimes because somebody has to do it. You already knew all that, when you went in. So officer training was a piece of cake.
What was your next duty station?
From Homestead, went to Mildenhall again. Hayford, sorry. They're right together. I went to Hayford. Like it's 3 miles from Mildenhall, but I went to Hayford and F-111s.
As a maintenance officer?
Yeah. Then became about a 2-year period where I felt that I'd made a mistake again. I had a jerk for a boss. I mean, a total jerk. And his boss was worse. And I just didn't understand what the heck where they were coming from. IG team came in. This is another one of my cases of getting recognized. The IG team came in and inspected us, and they made a request to have me sent to the IG team. So I went, after about 3 years at Hayford, not liking it that much because of the environment I was in. Went to the NATO IG team, USAF NATO IG team. Spent 2 years doing that. That was fun. Oh gosh, that you can't be any more fun than that.
How? Why?
I went to 30 different NATO or USAF bases, Italian bases, German bases, Dutch bases, Turkey bases. You were out doing something once each week. So it means you weren't at home. Ramstein was the center, Kaiserslautern was the center, but at least once during the week, if not a week or two in a row, you were gone. And you were gone to one of these other surrounding bases in NATO. Whenever you go there, they treat you, because you're an inspector, they treat you nice. You know, there's nobody that's going to get in your face and challenge you about anything. Okay, that's a power trip, so you got to control that, and that's what our bosses, that's what their main thing was, to make sure we weren't dorks. They ended up being pretty good. I met some really nice people on the team itself, some that I was associated with later in other assignments, and took my wife and kids to all their places. Got caught in a northerner in Amsterdam, because we were in a campground in Amsterdam this summer. Woke up in the morning and all the tents and trees had been knocked down and snow all over the tent and everything else. Anyway, we had crazy things like that happen and enjoyed it. We just had a good time. Some of the best times of my life, I think.
After the IG team, where'd you go?
IG team to headquarters SAC. And in the technical field support for B1. So me and 3,000 of my closest friends helped develop the ground systems and ground computer systems and airborne computer systems for the B1. So I was on that for almost 3 years. And that was I really got to get into my electronics and programming biz there. Computer systems is what I was working on, and they were having a lot of troubles with the computer systems course when it was being developed. So we actually got the computer to do practice our computer skills. We actually did some of the program, and it finally, 3 years down the line, B1 got deployed. I got to go to one of the bases or several times a week or several times a month and fix that whatever's going on or give them advice or whatever. And that was fun. So
what was next?
Out of headquarters SAC, I went to exchange officer for the RAF. And of all things, while I did work on F4s when I was a second lieutenant, meaning I was a line officer. I didn't know that much about F4s. I could see if it was airworthy and sign off the forms for safety of flight and all that, but didn't really know a lot about it. I just knew what you had to look for and knew that pretty well. They made me the engineering authority in the RAF for the RF Force Ames, which is a Rolls-Royce engine version of the F4 that the Brits put together, and it has better low-level capability and fuel things. It's not faster, but it was optimized for the environment they thought they were going to be in. So, and 3 years with the Brits was funny, although having been stationed at Mildenhall and Avard before, I was familiar with what I was doing. I was at RAF High Wycombe, which was quite a ways away, 70 miles away. So it was in the same general area. And met a lot of great people there, and still in contact with them, the Brits. So they were pretty easy to get along with. They were just crazy like everybody thinks Brits are. Yeah, there was no sense of security. I'm in headquarters, so I'm in charge of the airframe for all the F4s that the British have, which is about 140 or something like that. And so they would bring out papers marked eyes only British. Okay, that's RTS eyes only. So they would bring it out, British eyes only, and they'd open it up and say, "Come and look at this." No, I can't look at that, man. They would do that all the time to scare the hell out of me. I said, if somebody found out that I had read that, anyway, I read some of them. And there were some interesting things, but they're just normally super casual with that stuff. It's just scary as hell. But then after the exchange job, went to McConnell Air Force Base and became the commander of a maintenance squadron, which was the B-1s. And finally I was in charge of something that I knew something about. So, made lieutenant colonel, and they told me I was going to go to Minot and be a resource commander, and so that was my choice. I remain lieutenant colonel and get out, or go to Minot and vie for full gold. I missed something here. I missed one of my more. Anyway, I had a master's degree from AFIT, which is in the middle of that I missed. But so I had a degree, and I felt like I could teach and all that. And I didn't want to go to Minot because they said it was phasing down, and I'd no more than get done at Minot, and I'd go to some other dinky place that I probably didn't like. So I quit. Retired, 28 years in the service, and up until the day I decided to retire, I think I was happy with every moment of it. It just balanced out that it was better to retire than to go on.
Looking back over your enlisted and officer, as an enlisted, what was the best base?
Each base had its highlights that I would not want to not have. Karate. I started back to college part-time, but I started back to college. I met some nice people and an appreciation for different people. And McCoy, I met my wife. I learned scuba diving. I actually did very well at that. That was not military, but that was something else. And in the RAF, I met all these other people. So enlisted, one of these, I could not say that the best one was Asia, Florida, or England. I think I had something going on each one of them. Wouldn't want to lose any of it.
How about the officer side?
The officer training, our officer portion, which was the bigger portion, although I remember the enlisted better. It was, I think, you'd think being a commander should be the fulfillment of your dreams. I was a commander for quite a while. I didn't think it was a dream. I think being with the RAF as an exchange officer was probably one of the highlights. That was really good because I got to meet everything. I got to fly in airplanes. I flew in a Buccaneer in the right seat over Loch Ness, upside down. So,
were you flying it at the time?
oh no. But it would have been better if you let me have the hand on the stick because I was getting sick after a while. But yeah, it was.
Okay.
I mean, you can look out the back of the Kennedy and you see a cliff, 50 feet away from you, and you're going at like 450 miles an hour or 450 miles. Oh, geez, close my eyes. Oh no, keep my eyes open. It was fun.
A legacy question. How would you like to tell the future airmen or family members or grandchildren, what would you like to tell them right now?
Well, I had to think about it because I think it'd be important to say the right thing and not something that's extemporaneous without thinking about it for a long time. Very definitely, Air Force shaped me. It gave me all kinds of capabilities, background, education. It paved the way for when I retired. I came to work at Bellevue University after I retired through a circuitous way of getting here, but I got here. Spent 15 years here. That's how come I know John Tigane. He hired me. So I think the service was a great foundation to life. I think I'm in good shape. I've got a reasonable amount of money coming in. I'm getting older and I probably haven't got that many years left, but I don't regret any of the military service at all. That paid me back so many ways.
Speaking of the Vietnam time, did you have any of your friends, acquaintances pass away or get killed in the war?
I had acquaintances, several of them. I mean, we lost 30% of the airplanes out of Karate. So yeah. Not as bad as some people had it, but I did miss, there were things that happened that were, it's war, and it sucks.
How was your return trip to the United States during that time?
You know how that went. When I went over, I had to take a civilian ride to the jumping off point. They upgraded me I wore my uniform, they upgraded me to first class. When I came back, I was told not to wear my uniform because I would most likely be accosted by people either in the airport or in the airplane. And I rode back after I got to the States. I changed into civilian clothes and rode back to where I was going in civilian clothes. When I went to England, how many years after that was that? That was quite a ways. When I went to England, I landed at Heathrow. I had my uniform on, and I took a cab down to where the MC was and where our station was where I could meet you have two bosses. You have an American boss and you have your RAF boss. I went in to meet my American boss, and he asked me what the hell I was doing. I says, reporting. He says, get off your uniform. He says, you don't want to be in your uniform around here. And so I had my bags with me, so I changed clothes. And he says, yeah, I said, it's pretty dangerous to walk the streets with any kind of uniform on. So they were telling all the military people not to do that. So yeah, when I came back from Vietnam, we weren't that much appreciated. People who when I came back from Korat, Thailand, yeah, people changed their mind about military people for that time. Now they're looking back now and saying, hey, you should have appreciated it, but back then you'd lost it. It was not a popular war, obviously. I went there twice, by the way. I went to Udapau also. That was from the McCoy position. I went there on 188 TDY, 179 TDY. So same thing. I actually got a college class out of the way while I was there.
Well, Danny, I want to say thank you for your service.
No, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Everybody, a lot of people wear the uniform and wear it well. So, and while it feels good to be congratulated when people find out what I did, but probably not important. I feel good all by myself.
Thank you.